everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cartoon Clearance with Meg and Dan. I'm Meg.
And I'm Dan.
Oh, God. What did you do with Daniel?
I don't know. Let's change it up.
Today, we are squeezing into a very, very tight pair of not Ramblepants, but Ramblepantsu. Because today we watched the often forgotten cartoon series known as Mission Hill. Daniel, would you like to tell us a little bit about the background of Mission Hill?
Gladly. So, before we can really dive into the nitty-gritty about the show, I'd like to talk about the interesting and mysterious background of it, because two of The Simpsons' head showrunners, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, pretty much at the top of their game in 1998, decide to leave The Simpsons at pretty much the peak of season 10, which many people consider to be like the best era of The Simpsons, out of fears that they might be repeating their jokes or stresses that being showrunners can do to them. So they wanted to pitch and create a new show, which ended up becoming Mission Hill. So they worked together with an artistic director named Lauren McMullen, who also worked on television series like The Critic, King of the Hill, The Simpsons as well, later on The Last Airbender, and even did some work on Zootopia. And that's how they came up with the premise for this show, and then they pitched it to the network WB. Initially, the show received praise from the network because it combined highbrow, lowbrow. Its target audience was hipstery kind of kids, and had a really cool, unique art style. So they got 13 episodes that were produced with the intent of making 5 more. And that's when things started to go very downhill for this show, because through a series of bad marketing stunts and poor receptions, the show was pretty much canned after 2 episodes. Later on, the show appeared on various other late night networks. I think there was a TBS one. The one that I saw it on was Adult Swim, and the show sort of garnered a bit of a cult following. So by 2005, they released the 13 fully produced episodes for Mission Hill. You get a little bit of closure for that. The show came out in 1998 and features the voice talents of a lot of memorable people such as Tress MacNeille, Vicki Lewis, Tom Kenny, Brian Posehn, and Meg's favorite individual on Earth, Scott Menville.
Woo-woo!
A fun fact, the character Gwen is played by the Go-Go's guitarist Jane Wiedlin, who I wouldn't say I have a crush on her, but I think she's a cool person. And the theme song is done by a band that I greatly like called Cake. So Meg, with that long-winded sort of dissection of the production, would you like to give us a little summary of Mission Hill?
But of course. So you have your main character, Andy French, who is a 24-year-old aspiring cartoonist who works kind of a dead-end job at a waterbed store in the middle of Mission Hill, which, as Daniel has said already, is pretty much hipster central. And his lovely, boring life is interrupted rather rudely when his parents ask that he takes care of his 17-year-old geek brother Kevin, because his parents are moving to Wyoming, and they
don't feel
want
like
to
taking
wash
care
their
of
hands
him.
of Kevin by now. So Andy reluctantly agrees and allows Kevin to move into his apartment that he shares with his high school friend Jim and the hippie girl Posey. While Andy is more concerned about having his life cramped by his overbearing kid brother, Kevin ends up kind of seeing how strange city life is as compared to his, I guess, suburban life.
Sheltered
from
suburban
before.
lifestyle.
Sheltered suburban life. Complete with his nightly adventures of listening to the next door elderly gay couple arguing about condoms. So the show is a pretty episodic recounting of the brothers' many misadventures through life, their growth sort of as siblings, and you never know what's going to happen next in Mission Hill. One day you might be unemployed, and the next you might be framing 2 punks for burning down the convenience store while you were manipulating yourself in the bathroom.
Yes.
So, yeah, what did you think about this show, Daniel?
I really like Mission Hill. This is a show that I brought up once again because I had watched it a lot back when I was first starting to get into watching Adult Swim, back when I was probably a little kid. No, not too little, but probably around 10. And I would see the show come on every once in a while, and I was like, oh man, this this show's pretty interesting. And slowly, my brother and his friends were talking about, oh yeah, Mission Hill, it was a cool show. And then we found out that it was canceled really quick. And that's how we got our hands on the DVD.
TV networks ruin everything.
They kind of do. But I really like the show. It's got a sense of humor that I really like. The art style is so interesting. It's a cartoon, but the art style is cartoony. Like, a character will be drinking coffee and it'll be little dotted lines coming out of it. There's one part where someone might be angry at someone else, so he's shooting daggers out of his face. Someone might be, like, making a stabbing motion to their chest, and, like, little comic bubbles will pop up that'll be like, stab, stab, stab. Like, it's a really interesting art style that I find refreshing still, back then, very. And like I said before, the humor really fits in with my weird sense of humor. Meg, what about you? How did you like this show?
It was okay. I agree about the art style. I thought that was really cool. I liked the colors. I liked the political cartoony style of the character design mixed with kind of the simplistic, really blocky, cartoony style of the background art. I think, what did I say? It's kind of like Powerpuff Girls mixed with a political cartoon.
Maybe, something around those lines.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched Powerpuff Girls, so I could be wrong.
Yeah. But the color palette, I mean, that's just a great color palette.
Yeah, the colors were really cool. One thing I did notice was that Andy and Kevin, they had blue hair, but occasionally it would randomly turn black. And it happened so much, but I couldn't really find a pattern for what triggered it, because it wasn't that it was night, because there would be times where it was night and they still had blue hair, and then times where it would be light out and they would have black hair. And then there were times where they would be in the same frame and one would have blue hair and one would have black hair. Anyway, I liked a lot of the humor. There were some jokes that I thought were pretty legitimately funny. I really liked the side characters a lot.
That's where the show really comes together for me.
Yeah, I think what stopped me from really getting invested in the show was that I really didn't like the main characters, which arguably is the point, but I'm the type of person who can't watch Seinfeld because I start watching episodes and I'm like, you're all being horrible people who are just digging your own graves. And I think that can be funny to an extent, but when you have your whole show based off of it, it just makes me feel bad.
I, on the other hand, am a very big Seinfeld fan, so I had no problem with the fact that Andy and Kevin are huge, terrible people. For me, that made it a lot more real, which is funny because it's a cartoon with very exaggerated features and stuff. But I think as an adult, one of the things I really appreciate and enjoy about Mission Hill is that it feels like a real place. And I, as a little kid, when I was watching this show, I was kind of like, I don't think I was learning the lesson the show is trying to impass to me, because I was like, I want to move to Mission Hill. But like the idea of itself was very fascinating to me. Like, living in an apartment with your best friends, having these really colorful roommates, having these interesting neighbors. One of them owns a diner. You go eat in the diner every night. Like, it seemed like a fun life to be living. And that really appealed to me as a kid, thinking of like the world bigger that's out there besides my suburb. You know, I won't say I was a Kevin growing up, because Kevin's a jerk. But it was very interesting. And you mentioned earlier that the side and the background characters are great. And they really are. They can't be stressed more, because a lot of the situational setups and plot for the episodes come from Andy and Kevin. But I'd say a lot of like the best parts about the show come from either the immediate side characters or the background characters. That
I would agree.
Some of them don't even have a line, but just the fact that that person is there makes it all the more funny. And it's just such a really interesting humor for that kind of show. Like, one of the episodes is about there's a plot going on involving like I can't think of what it is specifically, but let's say Kevin is trying to get a recommendation to Yale. There's this subplot going on. I don't even know if this is the same episode, but there's a subplot going on where Andy and his friends want to go out to this club and they get denied, so they make up a fake club called the Meter Room that's in like this utility closet essentially.
Yeah.
And they just start getting a crowd because they don't let anybody into the room, and it's great. And you just see all these people, the people themselves, like these faces in the crowd are so funny, and like
they really want to get in.
One guy's like, I was there, man. First Kurt, then Tupac, then the Meter Club. I was there. It was horrible. I'll never forget. Like, it's like, okay, man, come on, man. Or even one of my favorite people, the Republican vampire.
Oh God.
Just weird background characters. You only
I
see once.
follow Marilyn Manson, but I obey Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh. Or even the penis guy who just walks up to you and goes, penis, 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 penis.
Right in your ear.
Gus and Wally for me are, I'd say, probably my favorite of the side characters. Jim is pretty great, but I love Gus and Wally because they have a
Me
really
too.
amazing relationship that seems explosive and at other times so sweet.
Yeah.
And, like, I want to give both of them a hug.
Yeah, no, I really liked the side characters. I really liked all the female characters too, or almost all of them. I thought that they were utilized really well as like aspects in this comedy show rather than just being like
throwaways or just
yeah, like
setups for romance. They were interesting.
They were interesting.
Like
they
every
had
other
their
character.
they had like their own little mini set of positive traits and flaws and stuff like that, and I really liked seeing that. And I think that's the thing, is that maybe I would have liked this show more if Andy and Kevin had been like side characters and someone else who was a little bit less of a complete jerk face was the main character, because I think then I would have been less bored with the episodes that were focused mainly on them suffering for their misdeeds. I just felt like it was maybe too much. And they did have some moments where they had these really genuine moments of bonding, and I really liked those, bonding and standing up for each other and encouraging each other. I was really happy to see that, because in those moments I was like, okay, now here's something that I can kind of root for you on. And they did also have some, I guess, relatable qualities, Andy in particular, in that he's, you know, working that dead-end job and he really wants to be a cartoonist, but he's suffering rejection after rejection.
He doesn't want to sell out.
Yeah,
but not
like
being
I
a
can
sellout is not, affordable.
I can sympathize with that.
Yeah.
But then he would just go and be way more of an asshole than is necessary to his brother, to people around him. And I was just kind of like,
well, I think the thing is that
I can't even feel bad for you.
I think the thing is that you have a good relationship with your sibling.
Yeah.
So it might be hard for you to fathom calling your sibling a douchebag. In my house, that's like every day. I need to go cry after this episode. But,
is it getting a little too personal
okay,
for you there?
Bit, sorry, I had a bit of a moment there. Anyway,
I understand. I understand that different people have different kinds of relationships with their family members than I do, and that's fine. I'm not saying, oh, it's not representative of the type of relationship that I have with my family, therefore it's bad. I like seeing characters with flaws, but I think part of it was that I tend to like things that have character arcs and character developments, whereas you like the episodic ones a lot.
Yeah.
So this one was definitely very episodic, and it only got 13 episodes. It didn't really give a chance for long-term development, which I understand, but it was just kind of disappointing to see
nothing change.
The brothers have a really nice bonding moment and then go back to like screaming obscenities at each other in the next one, or like trying to give them a really horrible day just because they think it's fun,
Yeah, I understand that. And as you said, I like cartoons that don't have a long overarching story. It can, but I like shows that don't make that the main focus, mostly because even to this day, when I was a little kid, also I like to watch cartoons mostly to laugh. I want to sit down and be able to just jump right in without being like, I missed the last episode, I don't know what's going on. Shows nowadays are starting to do that, and that's fine, but I sort of fallen off a lot of cartoons that are doing that because I'm like, well, it looks like I'm never getting into Steven Universe at this rate, because I don't even know. Well, I know where to start, but I don't really feel like I have the time.
But it's so good.
Yeah, okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, but it's like casually brush off Steven Universe. I'm just naming that one as,
no, it's a good example.
Sake. But I like this sort of structure where it's focused on a short little story, and those series, sometimes characters do have an arc, but it's subtle and it's over the course of the series. And you kind of get that in this show, but it suffers because it's only got the 13 episodes to go off of, which is a shame because you can find, I think, storyboards and scripts for the other 5 episodes that they wanted to do, And some of the episodes are just really funny, like the plots, and also you could see, oh, I can see this character growing here, and it would make sense here.
Yeah.
And then also there's the issue of having the episodes be jumbled when they aired.
Yeah.
The order they're put in is when they were made rather than when they wanted to be released. So you might have an episode where these people might be really nice to each other, and then the next episode they hate each other. It's like, oh,
And there's no
maybe
real transition.
it should have actually aired first, and then this one should have gone afterwards.
Yeah.
That would have made more sense. But speaking of the episodes, I'd like to just talk about for a little bit how the episodes are actually. Like, they're very atypical of, I think, what was going on at the time. Mostly because the focus was for the hip crowd. So it wasn't your traditional sitcom premise of, oh, it looks like Andy has to have dinner with the boss, but the boss is weird. It's like an episode, and I'm going to use this one because it's like, I'd say probably the best one. Two of my favorite episodes, but I'll talk about the first one. One, Kevin, I don't know if this is the first time, but he tries to masturbate, and while he's running the convenience store, like for his friend who needs to go study, and he thinks the police are coming, so he tries to burn the porno mag, because this was made in the 90s, before internet porn was really accessible. So he tries to burn the porno mag and accidentally causes a fire, and these two thugs were in the store and were looting it, but they left because they accidentally ran in on Kevin doing it, and so they leave, but Kevin burns down the store, and then those two kids get blamed for it. And Kevin doesn't want to admit that he burned down the store because he was jerking off.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't think you'd see that in many other shows. Maybe the only other one.
Especially because then they specifically address in that
parlay
episode, like, this is the kind of society that you have created where people are so ashamed of their own
natural
urges that they would rather send two somewhat innocent men to jail
relatively
than
innocent
just own up to it.
thugs. And the other thing I was going to say is you wouldn't see that many other shows at the time. Oh wait, you might see it in a Seinfeld episode. You would, actually. There's an episode about
I'm
it.
sure.
Well, I won't get into that. But that's a really funny, interesting episode. It's got a lot of funny jokes in it. Like, one of my favorite parts about that episode, and this is once again a praise of the side characters, they're so interesting. Like, each one has their own quirk. Like, the thugs are robbing the liquor store, and then one guy's like, yo, I gotta go take a leak. And he opens the door and he finds Kevin doing it, and he's appalled. He's disgusted. He's like, yo, man, he is indecent. And they're like, oh, we gotta get out of here. I can't even, that's just, no. Like, that's out of his comprehension. Robbing the liquor store? Yeah, we can do that. Oh, God, are you touching? No, 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 that's gross. How could you live with yourself? I love that. It's just like a really weird thing, but it just makes that's the kind of humor I like. It's just not random, but it's just weird humor. Or the other episode that I think is probably one of the best ones is when the real world comes to Mission Hill and Andy somehow makes his way into the real world.
Being a reality show.
A reality show, yeah. For those of you who don't watch MTV anymore, no. But that's a really great episode, and you get lots of interesting little tidbits from all the characters. And one of the reasons I like that episode too is because that's one of the few episodes where you see the character Jim actually get visibly angry with Andy, his best friend. I'm like, oh, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
You like Posey's reaction of...
Oh my gosh. I think Posey was probably my favorite character. She was like this hippie girl, but she wasn't the stereotypical, like, peace and love, man. You know, she had moments where she was just like,
I want to make money.
I was just gonna donate all these vegetables to charity, but screw that, I want money. Or like, there was this pimp that was hounding her for money because he thought that her massage business was a business of another sort. And he was trying to throw Andy off the roof, but he throws out his back, and so Posey comes over and starts massaging him, and he's like, oh man, that's great. And then she just kicks him off the roof. And Andy's like, oh my god, and she's like, I didn't want him to fall off the building and not feel it. And I'm just like, oh my god, she's got like this sadistic streak to her.
Oh yeah, like she's all for being like a weird bad person. And in that one episode, the premise is that Kevin finds this tape that Andy tried to hide from ever being seen again, and it's all the footage of him on the real world. And Posey's like, oh, it's my favorite part coming up, where Andy gets in a fight with the original person on the show who's supposed to be the loose bad boy. And he gets him so angry that he's like, yo, man, you got a respect problem. I am out of here. Peace, man. And then he gets, like, completely plowed over by a bed truck. It's like,
He gets hit by a truck. I was like, oh my god.
And the setup
Posey.
is Posey's like, oh, we didn't miss my favorite part yet, did we? It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, But the side characters are great. And Gus and Wally also, we mentioned them before, are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And episode 13, the last episode, is so sweet and adorable. Wally was a highly successful film cinematographer and director, and he was willing to put that all on the line because he wanted to cast Gus in a sci-fi film in which he couldn't act, but he loved him and he wanted him to be in it.
That was beautiful.
Which you could say is
really
selfish,
that
and I think that's one of the themes that you see in all the characters, is that every character has a selfish, terrible little bit to them, but at the same time, that might be the thing that makes them sweet and likable. Not necessarily for Kevin and Andy, but...
Yeah, they're too much on the
But
terrible.
you like Posey's little mean streak. You like how Gus and Wally fight all the time, and then when they make up, they're like in the elevator making out, and then Gus is like, what? We made up.
I think my favorite subplot was when Gus just had a knife stuck in his head. It's not explained, but
no, they
it
say
really
he got
drives Wally up the
mugged.
wall.
He got mugged on the way home. He's just like, don't
he?
fuss about it.
I missed that. Yeah, he's just being like, oh, it's nothing. I refuse to get it out, and Wally's freaking out like, you need to not. I really like that.
Oh,
subplot.
and then to get him to get the knife out, he like welds a bunch of like a menorah and a bird cage to his head.
A bird cage, an umbrella. That made me laugh.
And once again, great ending joke where like Gus falls in the street and he's sad because people are making a spectacle out of him, and Wally's like, Gus, maybe it's time we get the knife looked at. He's like, yeah, it is. So they, they're lovers, so they're walking away holding hands, and then like everyone's still looking, and Wally's like, what? You never seen two grown men hold hands before? Great way to end that scene. I loved it. And Gus and Wally in general have a lot of great lines. Like in one episode where everyone's wearing hot pants and Gus is really angry that everyone keeps calling them gay because he's like, they're not gay.
Any self-respecting gay man would never be caught dead wearing those.
Oh man, I also love the sassy guy at the coffee bar who's like, well, giddy up, cowboy. Going back to the ranch, because he doesn't like blue jeans because everyone's wearing hot pants now.
Yeah.
The episodes themselves are very diverse and eclectic, and they were very niche sort of setups and premises, and at the same time still very personal and could probably relate to people on a pretty broad scale, because there were still little things about it that you can get behind. Like, I didn't have a boss who did coke and, went to the strip club all the time. But I can understand maybe working at a dead-end job, or even just not being happy with your current position, but dreaming of more, and like you said, getting rejected all the time. There's a lot of interesting tidbits about the show that I do really appreciate. I think overall, I don't think the show is profound. But for me, part of the reason I like it so much is that I think it was canceled before its time. I think it was a show that was definitely ahead of its time as far as humor and art go, and it could have at least have one more season before getting the axe. And in a way, I find it tragic because it's a show that has a cult following. But I was talking to my older brother today. My brother's like, is there even a cult following? And I realized, yeah, the cult following was probably at its highest in 2004, 2005, and that's over 10 years ago now. There's probably a couple people who still like, oh yeah, Mission Hill, great show. But that show, like many other shows, is pretty much dead.
Right.
What about you? What were your concluding thoughts be?
I don't really know how much more I can say about the show. If it were on TV, I would probably watch it if there was nothing else on that I liked more. There were aspects that I liked. I did think that there were parts that were actually funny, but the protagonists didn't really do it for me. So overall, I would give it a not bad.
It's worth a click, is what you'd say.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't regret watching it.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. It's not an offensive show, and it's by no means like I've wasted my life, like that one guy in the episode did trying to find the SAT. That was 1974, 6 long years ago.
That was 26 years ago.
I know you can't hear me turning my head in the way the guy did, but just imagine this
No,
guy
unfortunately.
in his own world and then realizing, wait, oh. But
yeah, it wasn't bad. It had its moments.
it wasn't bad, and I think it has humor that is not dated, even though it still is very on the cusp of the millennium kind of humor.
Right.
But I think, honestly, I think that wraps it up for this episode.
I think it does. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed our rambles, please give us a like or a comment. If you have any feedback, we would love to hear it. And even a subscribe if you feel so inclined. We would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We are the Discount Ramblepants.
And remember, please, no meat touching, ma'am.
Blinga blonga.
Bling a blong, bling a bling a bling. I want this to be the fade out. Bling a blong, bling a bling.